Hey, it's Alec Crawford, your host for AI Risk Reward, and our first second time guest in the history of the show is Elie Bursztein at Google. Welcome, Elie.
Thank you for having me, Alec.
Well, as most of you know, Elie is an expert in cybersecurity in AI, and everybody just kind of wants to know what's going on there. It seems like I literally went to the MIT AI conference earlier this week, and they're basically saying you can't take a day off because not even a Sunday because things are changing so fast. So tell us about cybersecurity in AI.
Yeah, sure. I think there's a lot of excitement about the idea that AI is going to change a lot of the work stream of SecOps, vulnerability, but also attacker capability. I think there's a lot of excitement about that, and it has kind of exploded in the year and a half since we talked, right? I think we talked about a year and a half ago. I think a lot of people now are getting very, very excited about those things. I think it's also the time where a lot of people try to develop capability for about a year and a half now. So you start to see them happening because it takes time. I think it takes time to build this type of system which are at least reliable or at least useful enough that you can use them in production. I think last year people were super excited to test, and it seemed to work, but seemed to work versus you can reliably use it to accelerate cybersecurity defenses is a little bit of a leap, and I think a lot of people are closing in on that leap to a certain degree. I think we also have found that some of the use cases are extremely difficult, and it's going to require far more work than people would imagine. I'll mention one, for example, which is being actively worked on, which is finding vulnerabilities and patching. Those are extremely difficult. We did, for example, internally, we did a bunch of effort around both sides, and it turned out that the amount of tooling and the amount of customization and research you need to be able to find vulnerabilities is pretty insane. There is a blog post written by Project Zero under the codename externally is Big Sleep, where we show that if you equip the model with a debugger tool and other things, we might be able in certain condition to find bugs into prominent things, but that's just like at the beginning. And I think when people say, oh, it's going to find all the vulnerability tomorrow, it's far from the truth. I think there's a lot of difficulty into that. I think so it's promising, right? We see the AI being able to do things. It is not clear yet when we're going to get it to do things at the level of availability or complexity we need for vulnerability finding and patching. The other flip side of that, which is also interesting for us, is we did some exploration. I mean, the Ghost team did some exploration, which is the team who run OSS Fuzz, which is Google Open Source Fuzzer, where we fuzz all the open source project to use AI to try to test whether or not to improve the hardness of the fuzzer. Right? So we write usually tests, and then you get the LLM to look at what is happening and try to provide suggestion on how to improve the fuzzing hardness. And that worked extremely well. Now, the problem with that is they found too many things. And the question becomes now, if you find a cascade or a torrent of new things, how do you triage which one you should prioritize, which one are true CVE, which one are not true CVE? So as we remove one bottleneck, there is another one coming out. And it's not very clear how many bottlenecks there is and how much we can do. And related to that, one more, it's a little bit related to all those things, is we start to see people trying to send a flood of badly worded, bad quality bug report because they were generated by the AI, right? And a lot of people are like, oh, I can find vulnerability with AI, and then I'm going to submit it to a bug bounty, and now you have a lot of cry wolf stuff, and it's losing a lot of time from people who are, in theory, their job is to fix security vulnerability, but now if you are flooded with security reports which are completely generated by AI, I think that is a place where that is very not helpful, and a lot of people are like, oh, bug bounty pay quite well. True. I mean, you can pay up to $1 million for a vulnerability. So let me just run AI on it, and then I'm going to send you bugs. Now, we know of some vulnerability researchers who have found a way to use AI very effectively and do find bugs. So there is some, but they were very experts in the beginning, right? So some of people we know of have stood up their workflow. So I think it's interesting. We're still in the middle of the road, where I think some things start to appear and some things seems to be a little bit more distant in the future. But usually, like 3 to 5 years to get from ideas to maturity seems about right? So I think that's this year is going to be probably the first one where we see concrete results, I guess.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And obviously, secure AI agents, that's been in the news, especially with MCP and people looking through there, just going like, "Whoo, there's a lot of vulnerabilities there."
Yeah, but I think people miss the point on that one. I like to be honest, because the MCP is like you call it. I think some people have this idea that you can call arbitrary agent to arbitrary MCP. In reality, people who do workflows, they probably run their own private MCP server. I think for me, the main problem is a little bit different. As part of SAFE, the secure AI framework, we are updating obviously to have guideline on agent security. I think agent security is a completely different ball game than the chatbot, right? So chatbot, if you would have been like a brain in a jar. You talk to the brain, but it stays in the jar. So if something is wrong, that's still okay. When you have an agent, a lot of people want to have autonomous or semi-autonomous execution, right? And the problem is a lot of it is untrusted input. Let's say you receive an email and you want even a simple thing. I usually use this example of you would like to schedule automatically a calendar meeting. Right? In theory, it should be like, well, I receive an email and then the agent reads the email and then it has access to Google Calendar and then it sends a bunch of email back and eventually the meeting appears into your calendar. What can go wrong? And the answer is everything can go wrong because email is untrusted and there is prompt injection and prompt injection is not solved. So there's a lot of progress made at Google and elsewhere on improving prompt injection. But in that specific case, you are putting input which is not from you. You have adversarial input, and that is very, very difficult because it can completely derail the planning of the agent. And people are moving to those idea of like having hierarchical agent of like one planner who called arbitrary agent. So even the planning of what you do is becoming completely flexible. So in a way, it's very powerful. In the other way, it creates so much insecurity. For me, MCP is the least problem of the whole thing. So the main problem is like, do I trust an AI to read my email and do the right thing all the time? Because otherwise, delete calendar event, leak calendar event, send email on my behalf, gaslight people with a fake meeting, send a notification who doesn't exist. All those things can be done with a simple workflow I described. And this is not like, we're not even talking about controlling a firewall or controlling a network. We're talking like putting a simple calendar event into someone's calendar, and then you can see all the consequences. Like, oh, you're part of a very big company. Great. Now I'm going to schedule a meeting with the CEO, and then I'm going to remove you so the attacker have access to the CEO and is able to, CFO business email compromise, or gaslight it, or delete, or DDoS. So I think really agent planning and supervision and making sure the agent do not derail under like semi-automated or fully automated input which are untrusted, I think is the main problem. And so sometimes it seems to fly a little bit under the radar of some of the press, but I'm pretty sure most people who work on AI are aware of it. So that's really, I think, one of the main bottleneck of things are going to go wrong. And my favorite example is not to pick on one company or another, but just one of my go-to example of that is Apple tried to do, I don't know if you remember, news summarization, and that's exactly what happened when things go wrong, which is eventually there is a news who will go to get summarized by AI, and eventually it's going to make a mistake, and it's going to look horrible. That's why summarization of news is so hard. It's like it can work 90% of the time. The problem is even 1%, is it acceptable? And the answer to the public is no, it's not. Right? And so I think that's the level of reliability that people do not consider when they talk about agent. They talk a lot about, can it do it? Like 80% of the time. And the problem is our world is 99, right? And I think the more how many people are we going to kill with an AI which is wrong at diagnosis on medical? Probably we don't even want one, right? And I think that's a little bit of the thing which is, I think, underrated, reliability.
Yeah, and that's hopefully going to get better over time, but certainly for a lot of things is not great right now, especially if we're trying to get to 99 or 99.9% of reliability. Um, yeah, pivoting a little bit to AI ethics, a lot of the large base models in the US like do pretty well when you run the ethical test. Hey, write code for me that will help me jailbreak something or do something bad. But DeepSeek obviously came on the scene and does not do as good a job of that. So, what's going on with DeepSeek? What are your thoughts there?
Behind all the controversy, I think they did a good technical job. I think it's really, really well done. I think they took ideas which were known. They were not new ideas, right? They're not the first one to do thinking. I think we're talking about L1 here, right? We're talking about the reasoning one. I think it was well done. I think they have very strong engineering. They were able to catch up quickly to some of the later things. There are some debate of how they were able to catch up so quickly. I think OpenAI has something to say about that outside of what I know, what I do, because I'm not part of OpenAI. But I think it exhibits pretty strong characteristic. I think the model is pretty interesting in the sense of they're making everything open source. That is interesting as a strategy. Yeah, but we still need independent benchmarking. So I'm going to actually shamelessly put a plug here for something we're doing for free. So it's not really selling anything. We have released recently with Giscard, which is a French startup, a new independent benchmark for testing model against exactly for safety reason. The reason why we've been, as DeepMind, invested into working with them is you can't be the one creating the model and the one assessing the model. It's like the guy certified that the food is not poisonous. That's not going to work really well. So as a community, we probably want to have people making model and people assessing model. I know ML Common is doing some of it. Talk to Peter from there, and they're doing great work. So FI is an addition for that. I think it's getting pretty interesting results into disinformation and everything. Hopefully, you can put a link to the FAR benchmark next to the podcast for people interested. The reason why we were invested in it is because I wrote for internal use case a framework called LM-Eval, which allows us to run benchmark at scale across every model type, ours but also others for research purposes, right? And so they needed this type of technology, so we worked, and we are open sourcing our stack, and they are open sourcing the benchmark. So it's called the FAR benchmark. Really, really interesting result, and I hope we have more and more of those type of independent evaluation, so we kind of get a sense of how sideways things are going, and hopefully not too sideways. To be honest, I'm more on the trend that the model should be better and better at those type of stuff. And so if people are interested in to check it out or contributing, I think this guy is looking for more contributors and partners. And just that seems obvious, but I have to say it. Our model I evaluated, we never saw the question. Right? We don't even know how the question was designed. We talk about what they were trying to do. We help them to do technically running the benchmark, but I never saw the question, and no one did. Right? So when we see the result, it is so we got. So just to be clear, the boundary of this separation is here, right? We don't want to say it's an independent benchmark, but then Google get the question. That would be terrible. That is not happening at all. It's just like it's a technical collaboration around making it happen, and we're really, really happy how it turned out. We announced it, I think, last week, right? So it's pretty recent. And the blog post for Google is going to get out in the next few weeks. We had Next last week, so had a lot of volume of stuff announced, so we put it to the back end of the month.
Awesome. Well, that sounds great. I'm definitely going to check that out. And look, the other thing that I keep hearing about, and obviously we're starting to see more of is, and surprising it hasn't been more in some of these recent elections, is deep fakes. Tell us about that. Is there any advancement there in terms of detecting deep fakes or anything on the horizon out there?
Yeah, so I think the deepfake situation is interesting. As you said, it doesn't get a lot of traction, but I definitely get a lot of people who talk to me about it. So maybe for the listener, I tend to talk to a lot of people externally about various things. And if some of the listeners want to talk to me, I'm always open to talk to various people. That's how we met, right? I love to chat about cybersecurity and exchanging ideas, because I think we're a community and we should do that. And so talking to a bunch of CISOs and at large company, it is very clear that they are deepfake attacks. It is very clear that they are used by the attacker to try to pretend to be the CEO, the CFO, and they are very convincing, both on the video and the audio side. And it is somewhat concerning that the world is not ready or the awareness is not there, right? I think so there's very few training on it. I think very few people actually realize how bad it is. One of the things we saw from a company I'm not going to name is their latest deepfake model is pretty impressive. One of the people think they could do is like, if you touch your face, then that's you. So the problem is the latest deepfake model, actually you can touch your face and it just works. And so none of the basic tests is going to work. And so that leaves us to the point of, well, detector versus generator, at the end of the day, the generator always wins. And that's a theorem that Ian Goodfellow, which is a Googler, found like 10 years ago when he worked on GAN. So Ian invented the generative adversarial network, GAN. And one of the things he found that is at the end of the day, is the generator who generates things overpower any detector. So deepfake, while an AI risk, is actually a crypto problem. Right? At the end of the day, I expect we're going to have to give up on the current mental model, right? I think before the explosion of the internet, the idea was you have media, but media is somewhat vetted by the state, vetted by people. You have an editor, and you cannot publish anything without at least some oversight. So it's really, really hard to fake things. There is a lot of control. And then internet arrive, and everyone can post, right? And everyone becomes their own editor, and then it was the golden age of blogs, which I miss dearly. And then social media came in, and people start to posting, and so the amount of creators have multiplied beyond imagination. Everyone is a creator. Now, the problem with that thing is like not every creator is as trustworthy as another. And so now we need to reckon with that fact. And I expect that in the next few years you'll have to sign essentially all your video stream and sign your images and sign what you do. And there will be some very, very difficult curation to be made, which is like, you can post probably, right? That's the best case is you can post, but if you're not someone which have reputation or expertise into one domain, then you might be downranked or marked as suspicious or marked as not an authority or something like that. So that's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is some platform might decide to clamp down and just go revert back to only vetted, right? And a walled garden. But eventually, everyone publishing at the same level of virality and the same level of trust is not going to last, because that's unsustainable for society. And we've seen it. I'll give you an example, because in the US, it didn't percolate too much. For people interested, they should look at the election in Romania. What happened there is there was this candidate which is pro-Russian. And just to be clear, Romania doesn't want Russia. They've been very, very burned by the occupation of Russia during the Cold War. And the vast majority of people do not want to go back under Russia. Just to be clear, this is a very clear thing. However, this candidate was painted through TikTok as the ideal candidate, and about 20% of the people voted for him. And it was a Russian interferences, and they till the election such that one of the two front runner for the second turn would have been pro-Russian. And so they had to cancel the election. The European Union and the French Secret Service had to come public and say, here is all the evidence of manipulation. We cancel the election. Right? And so that's not as known as in the US, but look it up online. It's very clear what happened. And you're like, you can tilt a full election in a country by manipulating people on TikTok with fake rationale about why you should believe in that candidate versus that candidate. And so for me, that's the poster child of how dangerous it is, right? And how dangerous is unregulated or unfettered like virality. It's not like I think people should not be able to post. It's just like we need to find a way to limit the damage. And this is not working well. And you say, well, TikTok is under China, so maybe that's a worse offender. Maybe that's the one we have the most grip with and the most like evidence something happened, but long term that's the same thing. So I think that's what deepfake is. I think deepfake is a crypto problem and it's going to change and probably reduce a little bit what people believe is the right to publish. I think that's not going to be changed, but the right of virality is going to change quite a bit, to be honest.
Yeah, that'll make sense. And look, I heard Sec Gemini is out there now. It sounds super exciting. Tell the audience about that.
Sure. So that's a big project I've been working on for a year and a half, a little bit more. So Sec Gemini, I'll explain what it is a little bit, and then we can delve into where we think it might get going. And I said might because it's a research project, so we don't know where research is going, but we hope it's going to go somewhere. So Sec Gemini, the idea is cybersecurity is a little bit different from other fields because it is very, very timely. The vulnerability of today are not the vulnerability of yesterday and not the one of tomorrow. And when you have a normal model, you have a cut date, right? So the model is trained and the model have information up to a certain date. So the problem is you cannot train fast enough to be current for today. And so we have a lot of this data at Google thanks to Mandiant, but also to VirusTotal, Safe Browsing, and a bunch of other feeds, right? And a bunch of other internal things. We also have like OSV, which is the vulnerability aggregator. So we have a lot of those information. And so the idea behind the simple base idea at the beginning of Sec Gemini is if we combine the knowledge we have about cybersecurity with Gemini, so we extend Gemini, and Sec Gemini is based on Gemini 2. I mean, it's going to go to 2.5 very soon. You will get something which is very current and is able to answer questions such as what are the latest vulnerability affecting my WordPress? What is which threat actor should I be worried about? What is the exploit? Which vulnerability is used by that as threat actor? Or is this vulnerability in the wild? Or all those questions that today, if you are a cybersecurity analyst, right, whether you are running on a SOC or running on any kind of SecOps or threat intel, you have to use a bunch of tools, a bunch of API, a bunch of to get those answers, right? And so, whereas with Sec Gemini, you just ask it and it just provides you hopefully accurate. We do a lot of work to make it as accurate as we can. There is still hallucination, to be honest, but we try to make it very, very accurate. And I think that was the beginning of the idea. It's not the end of the idea, just to be clear. It's just the beginning of, we think it has enough utility now to start to engage with partners. It is not the full utility. We have a lot of things coming out. Can't talk about it just yet, but we have a lot of things coming in around Black Hat and DEF CON, and even later that year about new capability that we've been actively working. We're really excited to show eventually. But I think the idea is we have something which we believe is good enough and interesting enough to get people to start to partner with us. And so what is the business model behind Sec Gemini? Right? Why would we do this? So Sec Gemini is free. So if the people who get access, you get an API key essentially, and you get access to SDKs and you get access to a web UI, which will look like about what you would expect. I mean, we have some design element, but that's the Gemini app, and you can use it to do whichever research you want to do with us. It's free, which also means we expect people to provide to allow us to look at what data was sent to Sec Gemini to understand if it works, if it doesn't work, and ultimately improve the model and improve in general Gemini as a whole. Right? The idea is very much like you have the free Gemini app. When you use the free Gemini app, we reserve the right, with your consent, of course, to look at some of the session you have, and we try to understand if the AI performs well, and if it does not, what we can do to fix it. And so, to be honest, we were super surprised by how positive the reaction was. We got thousands of company, institutions, NGOs who reach out and say we want to use it. And so the last 15 days, we've been going through the thousands and thousands of applications to try to determine which of the first few one we're going to take, because we don't want to take and open it as a key and say free for all. So that's not the goal of research. The goal is, okay, what is your use case? is it a good use case for us? Can we learn something with you? Can it provide value to you? Can it provide value to us? Is it a good research partnership? It's not a commercial offering. Google have a commercial offering, which is AI SecOps via cloud and GTI, Google Threat Intelligence, right, from Mandiant processing. And so we're not here to replace the commercial offering. We are more into, can we advance cybersecurity, which is the goal of research. We try to really be able to get and develop the cyber AI capability we can use to make the world a safer place, essentially, for all of us. And that's not a competition. It's not something you want every company to be really good at cybersecurity. You want the world to be secure. We don't want one company to be super secure and the rest to be completely compromised. That's not the goal of the world, right? So that's what it is. So I think it's super exciting. As I said, we have reached a point where it's good. It do interesting thing, and it beat benchmarks. The reason why we added benchmark is not because we optimize for them. It's just like, as a result of being really good at threat intelligence and vulnerability and this, we beat every benchmark by, I don't remember, like 10% above everyone else. Which just shows that we have done the work and we have done the effort to really build something which is providing a gain of function. Are those benchmark enough? Certainly not. Are they representative of everything? Absolutely not. So for us, it's more like we have met the necessary condition to be able to talk about it, and now to invite the community to work with us on our research. And I think that's where we got a lot of confusion also. Like, is it a commercial offering? No. Can you get an API key for money? No, you can't. And I think people are a little bit, we could have done better, to be honest. We could have probably do a little bit better on the blog post and maybe communication around it. But honestly, we launched on a Friday, and we didn't expect to be top of the page on my Hacker News and get so many people in the next. It just means there is a need, which is great, but it's too much success. Good problem to have.
High class problem. Well, it sounds amazing. Definitely going to check it out. And in terms of, obviously, we've got RSA cybersecurity coming up. Anything you're looking forward to there? Any announcements there around Sec Gemini or anything? No, just
no, not there. Yet. No, it's not. I mean, RSA is very much like a commercial conferences where I'm sure Google have a lot of announcements, which are really exciting.
Yeah.
But they are not very much about research. I mean, they are very different target. I mean, I think I'll be there at RSA. I'm looking forward to talk to people and to talk about those things, and maybe we'll show a demo. Maybe, not sure, but that's about it. Just to show it exists. I think we're really reserving. We have a lot of exciting things coming out on how it actually help in some capacity and with different partners. And I said we're still looking out which are like the first few partners we're going to highlight and work with them. And so I think it's more like we were asking who want to collaborate, and we get about a lot of people, and now we're like, okay, which one makes sense for us to work with, and which one is fit. So it can take a few months to really get the thing visible, but really, really excited. We can talk after Black Hat if you want about and DEF CON about what we have. Let me just check, because we have something prepared for DEF CON. I don't think it's announced just yet. So anyway, so we'll be at DEF CON with Sec Gemini in one capacity or another. I don't think it's public yet. So
okay, you heard it here first.
So
all right.
Can't say what it is just yet until it's announced. But when it's going to be announced, we will be happy to talk about it. I'm just checking on the DEF CON site real quick as we.
Yeah, just to see if it's there.
Yeah. Yeah, actually it is public. Okay, never mind. So I can talk about that one. So it's on the DEF CON website. We're going to have a CTF about AI and cybersecurity, which is at DEF CON. So we'll communicate about it very soon. We will explain what it is, but it's a new form of CTF, which actually is going to be powered by Sec Gemini. So Sec Gemini will be at DEF CON in one of the contests. If people come to DEF CON and want to participate in the contest, we'll be happy to have them. Really excited to see that one. One of the first places where people will be able to see it and play with it and do interesting and cool stuff with it. So DEF CON, definitely.
Awesome. That sounds awesome. Anyway, any other thoughts, Elie?
Not much. I think it's. I think that's where we are. I think in AI cybersecurity. I think. I hope more people are excited about it. I'm really excited to see what other people are coming in. I think there's a lot of activity around people coming with creative ideas, and at the end of the day, I really hope we will make the world a better place all together with AI. So really optimistic, I would say.
Awesome. That sounds great. Elie, thanks for coming on the show. It's been Elie Bursztein from Google, an expert in cybersecurity and AI. Thanks for coming on the show. Great to see you.
Great to see you, Alec.